The 25% aluminum tariff by President Donald Trump has driven global aluminum prices up nearly 35%. This surge hits hard companies that depend on aluminum packaging. Coca-Cola, a century-old American icon, faces significant challenges amid this cost pressure. The aluminum tariff was introduced as a protective measure to shield the U.S. aluminum industry from what was deemed unfair competition by China and other countries. However, this policy has triggered a near 35% spike in global aluminum prices. For businesses like Coca-Cola, whose cans predominantly use imported aluminum, this means a significant increase in raw material costs. Faced with this financial pressure, Coca-Cola is caught between a rock and a hard place. They must carefully balance raising product prices to offset these rising costs, while also striving to maintain affordable prices to keep loyal customers. Reports suggest that Coca-Cola is actively considering shifting toward plastic bottles as a way to reduce the impact of these tariffs, instead of relying solely on traditional aluminum cans. However, no official statements have confirmed any plans for the company to exit the U.S. market. For now, Coca-Cola appears focused on adapting strategically to minimize losses and protect its market presence. Should Coca-Cola decide to downsize or pull back its U.S. operations, estimates indicate that over 50 manufacturing plants could shut down, directly threatening tens of thousands of jobs. This raises serious concerns given the crucial role these facilities play in production, packaging, and distribution. Beyond direct employment, millions more workers and supporting businesses in the supply chain would face indirect consequences, leading to reduced incomes and negative ripple effects on local economies. However, it's important to stress that no official confirmation has been made by Coca-Cola or labor authorities regarding exact figures. The company partners with approximately 200 bottling partners worldwide, with the majority of products sold in the U.S. manufactured domestically. The actual extent of the impact will depend on how Coca-Cola adjusts its supply chain and business strategies going forward. Coca-Cola is more than just a beverage brand. It's a cultural symbol deeply intertwined with American life for over a century. Any decision by the company to reduce its U.S. footprint or exit the market would not only cause economic loss, but also deliver a psychological blow to consumers, shaking their confidence in a national icon. The brand's emotional connection with customers means that such changes resonate far beyond financial metrics. For instance, if Coca-Cola switches packaging from cans to plastic bottles or scales back production, consumers may perceive this as a significant shift in their drinking habits and brand experience. This serves as a warning sign to other corporations about the importance of safeguarding brand value amid volatile economic policies. Coca-Cola's move could set off a domino effect, influencing other major corporations across industries such as technology, pharmaceuticals, and automotive manufacturing. The current unstable tariff environment and rising production costs are prompting many companies to rethink their manufacturing locations or investment strategies. If this wave of relocation gains momentum, the U.S. risks losing key production facilities and jobs, which would significantly weaken the nation's economic competitiveness. Still, it's worth noting that many businesses are actively seeking ways to adapt through optimizing production processes, diversifying supply sources, and leveraging domestic incentives. The real scale and scope of this impact remain contingent on evolving policies and economic conditions. In response to the unpredictable trade policy environment in the U.S., Coca-Cola is reportedly exploring long-term strategies to attract international capital by considering stock listings on major exchanges such as Frankfurt in Germany or Tokyo in Japan. Listing on these foreign markets would reduce the company's dependency on U.S. policy fluctuations and enhance access to global investors. Although this move involves significant compliance costs and regulatory hurdles, it reflects Coca-Cola's strategic goal to diversify financing and stabilize its business sustainably. Only 53% real chicken, Taco Bell, 88% real beef. What are you really eating at major fast food chains? Did you know that Subway uses only 53% real chicken? Taco Bell's beef contains 88% real meat, and Arby's sandwiches pack up to 43% of your recommended daily sodium? What's the truth behind these numbers? Let's find out. Subway, the chicken controversy. In 2017, a Canadian study suggested
Pretty awkward situation for Subway. DNA tests conducted by the CBC and Trent University have found the Subway's chicken fillets are actually 53.6% chicken and the other half is soy. Something even more gross, their chicken strips only have 42.8% chicken DNA.
3 to 2025 has confirmed the initial findings. So this remains a controversial topic. Economically, this debate highlights the importance of transparency in food ingredients for consumers. When trust drops, chains face greater pressure to prove product quality and safety, directly affecting revenue and brand reputation. Doubts about ingredients may also shift consumer eating habits, impacting the entire supply chain. Taco Bell, transparency in beef composition. Taco Bell openly states their beef contains 88% real meat, with the rest water, seasoning, oats, and even a type of yeast from the paper industry. They emphasize USDA inspection and control. The 2011 lawsuit over their beef content ended with Taco Bell's favor, and now they provide clear ingredient info. This reflects a trend in food industry modernization, where additives maintain flavor and texture. However, it raises consumer questions about product naturalness and health effects with regular consumption. Producers must balance flavor preservation and food safety. KFC, new commitments on safety and antibiotics. KFC was once criticized for hygiene and antibiotic use in chicken farming. Since 2018, they have stopped using antibiotics in
parks, flagship agricultural academies. Tony's farm is one of the best. That's why KFC came and filmed here, so you can imagine what the rest are like. KFC needs to commit to moving away from the intensive factory farming of chickens like this and work on a kinder, more sustainable, plant-based chicken commitment.
Arby's, the truth about beef and sodium.
Why do people still think Arby's is just roast beef when we have 17 other sandwiches? Maybe it was because the last time you went to Arby's, you were with your grandparents, who ate exclusively roast beef every meal.
Not 40% per slice, as some rumors claim. Using salt and additives helps preserve moisture and shelf life, but raises long-term health concerns if consumed often. This is a common challenge for processed foods, balancing quality, preservation, and health. Consumers increasingly demand transparency and product improvement. Burger King, real flame and past horse meat scandal. Burger King uses real flame grilling, producing natural smoke flavor and authentic char marks, not artificial smoke as some rumors claim. The 2013 horse meat scandal involved a third-party supplier in Europe and has been fully resolved. Since then, Burger King has implemented stricter supplier oversight to ensure the quality and safety of their meat products. This commitment to transparency and quality control helps Burger King maintain customer trust and protect their brand reputation in a highly competitive market. Flame grilling not only gives their burgers a distinct flavor, but also supports the chain's marketing identity. However, consumers should still be aware of the broader challenges facing the fast food industry, such as supply chain complexities and food safety standards. Ultimately, Burger King's approach shows how fast food chains can adapt and respond to controversies, balancing tradition with modern expectations for food transparency and quality. Did you know that in just a few weeks, nearly $1.4 trillion have disappeared from the global financial markets? The US dollar, often called the king of currencies, is facing unprecedented changes. Is this the sign of an imminent decline, or just a mild flu for the greenback? There's a story that China's central bank, the People's Bank of China, sent an email to over 400 major export companies, telling them to stop using the US dollar in new contracts and switch to the Renminbi or other currencies. Sounds like a historic turn, right? But wait, reliable sources like Reuters and Bloomberg have not confirmed this clearly. In reality, the PBOC only advised state banks to reduce USD purchases in foreign exchange reserves, a strategic but cautious step. If a sudden ban had actually happened, do you think global financial markets could stay calm? Absolutely not. So maybe this is just an exaggeration or a misunderstanding. This shows us that in the international currency world, every decision is weighed carefully because the consequences are massive. The 10-year U.S. Treasury yield is around 4.54%. That sounds high, but it is not the highest in over 20 years. In 2001, yields were even higher. regarding the $25.7 billion that left global bond funds in 1 week. Yes, this number is real, but that is a global figure, not just the US. Outflows from US funds are much smaller. So what really causes these volatilities? The Federal Reserve's interest rate hikes, inflation fears, trade tensions, and global political uncertainty. We should not just blame China. Financial markets are a complex web of multiple factors. In China, the Renminbi is now the most used currency in cross-border domestic transactions, nearly 50%. That sounds impressive, right? But on a global scale, the Renminbi only accounts for about 3.5% of total international payments, modest compared to the US dollar and euro dominance. What about the M-Bridge project? Blockchain technology enabling fast payments without the USD or the outdated SWIFT system sounds exciting. However, M-Bridge is still in testing and operates on a limited scale. In other words, the Renminbi is rising, but it is not an immediate replacement. This race is just beginning, with a long road ahead. Did you know that China surpassed the US in total merchandise trade value back in 2013? And exports jumped 8.1% in April 2025? Clearly, this giant remains strong, but the claim that 70% of the global economy trades more with China than the US? That is not proven and might be an overstatement. The export surge mainly reflects businesses rushing before US tariffs were applied. International trade is far more complex than simple numbers, many interconnected forces at play. So always keep a healthy skepticism when hearing big numbers like these. Despite challenges, the US holds key tools sustaining its economic dominance. Flexible monetary policy lets the Fed react quickly to changes, balancing inflation and growth. Strong trade negotiation power helps keep the dollar as the world's primary reserve currency. The US is also developing a national digital currency to modernize finance and maintain leadership. While slow adaptation may raise borrowing costs and test confidence, the dollar's roots go far deeper. The US financial system is one of the most liquid and connected worldwide, encouraging global use of the greenback. Geopolitical influence and institutions like the IMF further support the dollar's stability and global acceptance. In short, the US dollar is not stepping down soon. It remains the king of global finance with powerful cards in hand. Did you know that tariffs imposed by the Trump administration caused Amazon to lose over $13 billion in profits over just 3 years? Yes, that number sounds shocking, doesn't it? But is it entirely accurate? And what really happened behind the scenes when this e-commerce giant decided to pull out of the United States? Tariffs can be a powerful tool to protect domestic manufacturing and reduce reliance on imports. However, when rates reach as high as 145% on Chinese goods, plus an additional 10% on many other products, it becomes a sharp blade that can cut into profits and raise prices for consumers. Amazon imports roughly 70% of its goods from China, so the rising costs hit them hard. And who ends up paying for that? Exactly, the consumers. Higher prices mean lower purchasing power, which negatively affects domestic consumption. Amazon even planned to disclose the price hikes caused by tariffs, aiming for transparency. But the White House opposed this move, forcing Amazon to keep it quiet. This shows the tension between protectionism and transparency in a market economy. Quite an irony, isn't it? Global supply chains are complex networks optimized for low costs and fast delivery. But high tariffs and new rules, like removing duty exemptions for low-value goods, have shattered that balance. Amazon lost a critical logistics advantage and had to act fast. Their bold move, called the Silver Compass Project, involved shifting global headquarters to places like UAE, Singapore, and Ireland. They're swimming out to deeper waters to preserve profits and remain competitive in a volatile trade policy environment. This shows that tariffs don't just raise prices, they reshape the global economic map as major players relocate to adapt. These shifts also mean jobs and investments are moving away from traditional hubs, creating new economic centers in regions with more favorable trade conditions. Amazon's strategy reflects a broader trend where companies seek stability and predictability amid trade tensions. This constant adaptation is now a necessity for survival in a world of uncertain policies. Ultimately, the global supply chain landscape is being redrawn, with long-lasting effects on international commerce. Seattle, once the booming home base of Amazon's growth, is now feeling the ripple effects. As news of Amazon's exit broke, its stock plunged, housing demand dropped, dragging real estate values down. Small businesses dependent on Amazon employees' spending saw sales fall, facing closures or layoffs. Municipal tax revenues dropped, putting pressure on funding for infrastructure and public services. Thousands of workers now face uncertainty. They must decide whether to relocate or search for new jobs in a shifting market. It's a tough lesson on the risks of urban development relying too heavily on just a few corporate giants. Amazon is not alone in this struggle. Other giants like Apple, Tesla, and Walmart are also reassessing their supply chains and operations. To minimize tariff costs and maximize flexibility, the trend of moving production and headquarters overseas to benefit from tax breaks, modern infrastructure, and lower costs is becoming increasingly common. This shifts the balance of economic power between nations and presents a challenge for the U.S. to remain an attractive hub for global corporations. Amazon's exit offers a crucial lesson. High tariffs are not always the best answer. While aiming to protect domestic industries, excessive tariffs can increase production costs, weaken company competitiveness, and push business activities abroad. To retain major corporations and ensure sustainable growth, U.S. policymakers must strike a balance between protecting domestic interests and fostering a favorable business environment that encourages innovation and long-term investment. Adapting to globalization, diversifying supply chains, and enhancing competitiveness are key factors in maintaining the U.S.'s position as an economic leader.
Did you know BYD sold over 4.27 million vehicles in 2024 alone? That's a global phenomenon, reshaping the automotive landscape worldwide. Meanwhile, in Canada, more than 125,000 auto workers are waiting for a miracle as major U.S. automakers begin to pull back from the region. In January 2025, the United States officially imposed a 25% tariff on all imported vehicles. For Canada, the rate is only 12.5%, but this comes with strict and complex conditions. Vehicles must have a high percentage of North American-made components to qualify. This is easier said than done, especially for highly integrated global supply chains. Immediately, automotive giants like GM, Ford, and Stellantis began scaling back production activities in Ontario. While not a full withdrawal, this resulted in fewer shifts, reduced output, and temporary layoffs that have placed workers in a difficult situation. Imagine Ontario, Canada's auto heartland, now struggling to keep pace due to policy changes just across the border. This has created a ripple effect through the local economy, impacting not only workers, but also small businesses and supply chain partners dependent on a vibrant auto sector. In light of these challenges, Canada has started to look beyond traditional partnerships. Enter BYD, China's electric vehicle giant. BYD is actively negotiating plans to open a manufacturing plant in Ontario. Other Chinese automakers like NIO and Geely have also been mentioned as pursuing R&D operations in Quebec. Imagine a Chinese EV factory emerging right in the heart of Canada's automotive territory. But there's more to this story. China needs critical minerals such as lithium and cobalt, plus access to clean energy resources, many of which are abundant in Canada. Canada, in turn, needs job creation, foreign investment, and a new industrial strategy after facing setbacks from U.S. companies' retreat. This appears to be a mutually beneficial exchange on the surface. Yet the situation is more complex and fraught with challenges than it might seem at first glance. For instance, integrating Chinese technology and capital into Canadian industries raises questions about long-term control and influence. Predictably, the reaction from Washington has been sharp and unmistakable. White House advisors have raised concerns that allowing Chinese firms to deepen their roots in North America's EV sector would effectively mean handing over crucial technology to a strategic rival. Electric vehicles today represent more than just transportation. They symbolize control over energy, dominance of supply chains, and broader geopolitical power. If Canada proceeds down this path, it risks becoming a key hub for Beijing's strategic expansion into the Western Hemisphere. The growing presence of Chinese corporations in such a critical sector fuels American concerns about potential technology leaks and loss of control over essential manufacturing processes. These issues extend well beyond economic competition. They touch on national security risks that policymakers cannot ignore. The U.S. government is closely monitoring developments, warning Canada of the strategic implications and urging caution in this evolving partnership. If the deal comes to fruition, a BYD manufacturing plant in Ontario could create between 2,000 and 5,000 direct jobs. Additionally, suppliers of batteries, semiconductors, and other high-tech equipment could experience significant growth opportunities along the expanded supply chain. Ontario could be transformed into the new Detroit for electric vehicles, this time powered by clean energy rather than fossil fuels. However, these bright prospects come with risks that cannot be overlooked. Canadian businesses may face the loss of decision-making power as they become intertwined with larger Eastern production networks. Smaller domestic companies could struggle to compete against heavily backed Chinese conglomerates with strong government support. Striking a balance between economic benefits and strategic autonomy is the biggest challenge Canada faces in this rapidly evolving landscape. With China's influence expanding and the U.S. government pushing back firmly, Canada must carefully weigh the costs and benefits of this pivotal move. The stakes have never been higher for the Canadian automotive sector, and the decisions made today will shape the industry's trajectory for decades.
Did you know that in just a few weeks, nearly $1.4 trillion have disappeared from the global financial markets? The US dollar, often called the king of currencies, is facing unprecedented changes. Is this the sign of an imminent decline, or just a mild flu for the greenback? There's a story that China's central bank, the People's Bank of China, sent an email to over 400 major export companies, telling them to stop using the US dollar in new contracts and switch to the Renminbi or other currencies. Sounds like a historic turn, right? But wait, reliable sources like Reuters and Bloomberg have not confirmed this clearly. In reality, the PBOC only advised state banks to reduce USD purchases in foreign exchange reserves, a strategic but cautious step. If a sudden ban had actually happened, do you think global financial markets could stay calm? Absolutely not. So maybe this is just an exaggeration or a misunderstanding. This shows us that in the international currency world, every decision is weighed carefully because the consequences are massive. The 10-year U.S. Treasury yield is around 4.54%. That sounds high, but it is not the highest in over 20 years. In 2001, yields were even higher, regarding the $25.7 billion that left global bond funds in 1 week. Yes, this number is real, but that is a global figure, not just the US. Outflows from US funds are much smaller. So what really causes these volatilities? The Federal Reserve's interest rate hikes, inflation fears, trade tensions, and global political uncertainty. We should not just blame China. Financial markets are a complex web of multiple factors. In China, the renminbi is now the most used currency in cross-border domestic transactions, nearly 50%. That sounds impressive, right? But on a global scale, the renminbi only accounts for about 3.5% of total international payments, modest compared to the US dollar and euro dominance. What about the mBridge project? Blockchain technology enabling fast payments without the USD or the outdated SWIFT system sounds exciting. However, mBridge is still in testing and operates on a limited scale. In other words, the renminbi is rising, but it is not an immediate replacement. This race is just beginning, with a long road ahead. Did you know that China surpassed the US in total merchandise trade value back in 2013? And exports jumped 8.1% in April 2025? Clearly, this giant remains strong, but the claim that 70% of the global economy trades more with China than the US? That is not proven and might be an overstatement. The export surge mainly reflects businesses rushing before US tariffs were applied. International trade is far more complex than simple numbers, many interconnected forces at play. So always keep a healthy skepticism when hearing big numbers like these. Despite challenges, the US holds key tools sustaining its economic dominance. Flexible monetary policy lets the Fed react quickly to changes, balancing inflation and growth. Strong trade negotiation power helps keep the dollar as the world's primary reserve currency. The US is also developing a national digital currency to modernize finance and maintain leadership. While slow adaptation may raise borrowing costs and test confidence, the dollar's roots go far deeper. The U.S. financial system is one of the most liquid and connected worldwide, encouraging global use of the greenback. Geopolitical influence and institutions like the IMF further support the dollar's stability and global acceptance. In short, the U.S. dollar is not stepping down soon. It remains the king of global finance with powerful cards in hand. April 2025 marked a critical turning point for the U.S. economy. Over 2,200 American businesses declared bankruptcy, a staggering number that signals deep unrest. At the same time, the average tariff rate soared to nearly 28%, the highest it's been in over 100 years. The reaction was immediate and sharp when the U.S. announced new tariffs targeting over 150 countries. The S&P 500 index plunged, losing more than $5 trillion in just the first few days of April. This plunge ranks as one of the most severe in recent history. Why does this matter? Because it reflects a crisis of confidence among investors, the very engines fueling the American economy. When investor trust evaporates, capital dries up. Companies struggle to raise funds for expansion or day-to-day operations. The result? Economic disruption ripples from Wall Street down to Main Street. Small businesses and individual investors, already vulnerable, face heavy losses. The domino effect triggered by tariff policies shakes the financial sector to its foundation. The stock market isn't the only victim. American businesses are under immense pressure from soaring import tariffs. Retail giants like Walmart have publicly warned about the impossibility of keeping prices low as operational costs skyrocket. While the government expects businesses to absorb these burdens, the reality paints a different picture. Small and medium enterprises, already struggling, face crushing increases in raw materials, shipping, and production costs. Supply chains are severely disrupted. International suppliers hit by tariffs delay shipments and hike transportation fees. To stay afloat, many companies slash production or cut jobs, weakening their competitive edge both at home and abroad. Though tariffs are levied on imported goods, the real losers are American consumers. Studies reveal that up to 92% of tariff costs are passed on to buyers through higher prices. For example, a hoodie imported from Bangladesh can cost $7 more, while a microwave from China might jump nearly $30 in price. At a time when the cost of living is already soaring, these increases force consumers to cut back on spending or skip non-essential purchases. This shift hits retail, services, and domestic manufacturing hard. If prices continue rising, consumer spending, the backbone of the economy, could falter, slowing down overall growth. Unemployment sits at a seemingly stable 4.2%, but the numbers tell a more troubling story. Over 685,000 jobs have disappeared in recent months, especially in retail, transportation, and manufacturing sectors, all directly impacted by tariffs and global supply chain breakdowns. Job losses strain workers financially and erode consumer confidence, leading to reduced spending. Without jobs, the economy loses vital momentum. If tariff policies persist without support measures, unemployment could rise further, threatening social welfare and economic stability nationwide. The International Monetary Fund forecasts global economic growth at only 2.8% for 2025, well below earlier expectations. Some experts warn that 2.3% growth or lower signals an impending recession. Rising trade protectionism and supply chain disruptions have created global uncertainty. Key U.S. trading partners, including the European Union, Japan, and India, are steadily reducing dependence on American imports, moving toward a trade decoupling trend. This not only lowers trade volumes, but also shakes confidence in the U.S. as a reliable partner. The global economic future now faces serious questions about sustainability and resilience amid mounting risks. The global slowdown is fueling growing concerns over widespread job losses and shrinking investments worldwide. Without coordinated global action, these challenges could deepen, threatening a prolonged period of economic stagnation.